In this series, Potential, we're talking about dating and relationships. Whatever label you put on it, we're talking about the idea of having somebody in your life that you're interested in romantically and that you hope is interested in you as well. And right off the top, I want to give you the bottom line of today's message. By the time we're done here today, I want you to remember the truth that nothing in life should hold you back from the rest of your life. No matter what it is, a hobby, a person, a relationship, an addiction maybe, nothing in life should hold you back from the rest of your life. My kids have been obsessed with the Sing movies lately, and I've watched them on repeat constantly, right? All the songs get stuck in my head. And when things get stuck in our head, it's hard to focus on anything else. It could be a song, it could even be the latest trending audio that keeps showing up in your reels or TikToks. But music and sounds aren't the only thing that can get stuck in our brains, right? There are times when it's a pair of shoes that I want to buy or candy that I'm just dying to eat. We all get the idea of something living rent-free in our heads, whether it's a thing, a person, or an idea. And if you found yourself interested in someone recently, then you know it's kind of a lot like a cheesy gordita crunch. You can't get that person out of your mind, and no matter how hard you try, they just keep popping up there. Right? Thinking about them never gets old. Talking about them never gets old, at least not to you. And that's normal, by the way, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It only becomes a problem when a person, or the idea of having a person, becomes an obsession. Right? And we've talked about this a little bit before up here, but how do you know when thinking about someone becomes an obsession? Right? It's when you have somebody in your life and they're all you can think about. It's when you have somebody in your life and they're the only person that you spend time with. The people close to you haven't seen you in a while because most of your free time is spent exclusively with that person. It's when you have somebody in your life and they're all you talk about. Your friends don't have to guess what you're going to be talking about today because they already know. It's when you don't have somebody in your life, but the idea of someone takes up all your headspace. You're searching, waiting, and hoping to find that person, and you talk about that more than anything else. Or most people fall into one of two categories when it comes to this. You either think, that's not me, I'm not that person, am I? Or you might be thinking, why is that even a bad thing? Right? If you like someone and you quote unquote obsess over them, like why is that a bad thing, right? Everybody goes through that. And there's nothing wrong with having someone in your life. And there's nothing wrong with being excited about it, right? That's normal, it's natural. If you don't have someone in your life and you wish you did, there's nothing wrong with that either. But when everything else in your life seems to kind of fade out or seem just not important anymore because of maybe one person or the idea of somebody, that's where it can become problematic. Why? Well, because you get distracted. There's so much to do in high school that matters. It's easy to miss out if all you're focused on is a relationship or the idea of a relationship. Chances to make memories with your friends, chances to connect with your family while you're still living at home. You'll miss out on chances to develop your talents. You may even miss out on chances to learn new things or to influence others. Being too focused on any one thing, whether it's a person, a relationship, a hobby, it's never a good idea. And secondly, you push people away. Your friends aren't stupid. They realize, even if you think they don't, when your heart, time, energy, and thoughts are not with them, when you ghost them all the time to hang out with someone else, they feel the distance and separation. If you're not careful, eventually that can take a toll on all of your other relationships. And all of a sudden, the people you used to care about the most don't feel like you care about them at all, even if you do. And lastly, you lose yourself. Your identity becomes wrapped up in the other person almost. It's like you don't know who you are without them. You start to make all of your life decisions, small and large, based on your relationship with that one person. Where am I going to go to college? Where do I want to work? What do I want to do with my free time? And what do I want to do on the weekends? And everything, it seems to start to revolve around that one person. So if it does ever end, or if you ever feel called to something bigger, you don't quite know how to separate yourself because somewhere along the way your identity got lost in that other person. We've all been around people who act like a married couple in high school. And even if it seems kind of romantic, it also seems kind of weird, right? We've all seen people give up friends, sports, even things that they're into for the person that they're dating. And deep down, we know that they're probably missing out. The question is, what can you do about it? You can't not care about someone if you care about them, right? I mean, isn't the whole point of a relationship that you care about them? But how much of that is good for you and how much of it just really isn't? we're going to look at a passage from a letter written by the Apostle Paul, who, as you probably already know, wrote a lot of the New Testament. He wrote all these letters to the various churches in the first century. Most of them new, because obviously Christianity was still kind of new. And it's good to know his motivation was always out of love. He wanted people to love God, love each other, and live better lives, which is something that we all want as well. Sometimes when someone's preaching or they're giving the truth, right, it can feel like a condemnation over anything that doesn't fall in line with that. But the reality is we have to talk about the truth, even if it's a truth that hurts, even if it's something that we don't want to hear, or if it seems accusatory in nature because we know we're guilty of it deep down. We can get defensive. That's kind of human nature. But Paul, like what we tried to do here, was always speaking out of love. He would call out things when necessary, not to beat them down, but to help them to renew their minds to a new way of thinking so that they could be set free in Christ by a new standard, new way of living, rather than just falling in line with what everybody else around them was doing. So the letter that we're going to read from today was written to a church in a town called Ephesus, which is it's a diverse place. It's modern day Turkey. It's where Timothy was at. If you read the letters to Timothy, this is where he was. And dating, as we know, as we talked about last week, didn't really exist in the ancient world when Paul wrote this, the way that we think about today. So while this passage doesn't necessarily talk specifically to dating, the truths found in it are absolutely essential, and we should apply it to our dating philosophy as Christians. This is how Paul starts. He says, "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise." Paul is basically saying, pay attention to how you're living your life. Don't just let it happen to you. And as you choose how you live, wise is better than unwise. And I think we would all agree with that. Wisdom is important when we talk about dating, because having someone in your life is rarely as easy as right and wrong. Most of the time, dating decisions have more to do with wise versus unwise. It's rarely as much about, is that person good or bad? It's more about, are they good for me? And are they good for me right now? Right? Paul's encouraging his audience to pay attention to what you do and make the wisest choices that you can. And this principle can be applied to just about anything, right? Your friendships, school, schedule, etc. But for the sake of today's conversation, here's some questions to ask yourself when it comes to dating. Okay, one, at what point does being interested in someone or in the idea of someone cross the line into obsession? Secondly, when it comes to my interest in dating, how close am I to that line? While relationships don't have obvious labels of interest or obsession, we can probably identify some indicators or signs of interest or obsession. So, what might those indicators be? Well, let's graph it out visually here so maybe we can play around this idea a little bit. You've got interest on this end down here, which, yes, I know, I have terrible handwriting. If you've been around for any number of years, you know, I can already hear you saying it. I'm sorry. Bear with me. So we've got interest on this end. In this end, we have obsession, right? So you got people on either side. Some ideas that might give you an idea of whether or not you are flirting with that line of interest or obsession. Which end might you land? Well, following someone on Instagram, that's probably, interest. But maybe stalking them on every single post, or checking their story on Snapchat every single hour to see if they posted something new, maybe closer to obsession. Like, let's just call it constant check-in. Maybe it's not even just on social media. Maybe it's just like actually texting them and checking in like every 5 minutes. Being like, hey, what are you doing? What are you up to? Probably closer to obsession. Saying, hey, in the hallway, like when you see them in school, probably just like, hey, what's up? Not a big deal. But, following them to class every single day and being late to your own class because you were walking to the opposite end of the building with them, maybe obsession. Obviously not just walking to class, but you get what I'm saying. All right, saying good night every night, Probably, not a big deal. It's nice to say, okay, good night, sweet dreams. But maybe having someone's face printed on your pillow, nah, that might be all the way over here somewhere, right? Right. Hanging out a couple times a week, probably not a big deal. But spending all your time, probably over here in the obsession realm. Right, and we could plot several other more examples, but I'm sure you get the idea. Like, there are certain things that are just, you're showing an interest in somebody, and there's other things that, like, hey, it's taking up all your time and energy and mental space, and it's probably bordering on obsession, right? You want to be careful to avoid those tendencies as much as you can, and keep it friendly over here as often as you can, no matter if you're actually dating the person or you're just stalking them, which hopefully you aren't doing. This might even be a fun little activity you guys could do with your group afterwards, is come up with your own ideas of where some of these things land. But Paul's also not done making his point here. He continues, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. So in other words, your time gets taken up by so many different things. It's important to make the most of what you have left. Paul is simply pointing out the habit that most of us have of wasting time in unwise ways. It was true for people back then, and it's true for us too. We all know what it's like to waste time on all the wrong things. Sometimes we do this and it's no big deal, but other times we miss out on the stuff that actually really matters. And Paul wants his readers and us to make the most of our time. And when it comes to high school, this is important. High school is a unique part of your life, and you will never experience anything like it ever again. You'll look back on these days and be surprised how much of it matters and how much of it shaped you into the person that you become. And you don't want to say, oh, I missed that time that I was with my friends because I was always distracted with that one relationship. Or it sounds like it was fun, but I don't remember much of it because I only hung out with so-and-so. Right? You have a chance to encourage your friends, influence people who are younger than you, and develop yourself in so many areas while you're in high school. Right? Dating can be a great part of that, but when it takes up too much headspace or too much of your time, it has the potential to leave you or the other person with hurt or regret. In other words, God is at work in your life, and God wants to use you in specific ways while you're in high school. He's not just waiting for you to grow up so that he can use you. He wants to use you now. And dating can be a great part of that. But unless we're careful, it can also become a big distraction to that. So to make the best use of the time that you have in high school, one thing that we can take away from Paul's encouragement to us is this: nothing in life should hold you back from the rest of your life. Right? That's not a knock on the person that you like or the person that you're dating. And it doesn't mean that the relationship doesn't have potential, but it does mean that the more we make someone the entire focus of our life, the more potential that we have to miss out on the other things that matter. And don't miss this. Another human being is not meant to carry the weight of all your emotional needs. That's called being your savior, and only one person is designed to do that. Right? That's too much weight to put on just one person. Not only that, but sometimes the best way that you can care for another person is by helping them make the most of their time too. Is dating something that you can do with part of your time and part of your attention? If so, awesome. You have a ton of other parts of life to focus on right now. But if your dating life is holding you back from the rest of your life, it may be time to rethink some things. And here's what that looks like. First off, you have to broaden your focus. When we become so obsessed with the person that we're dating or the idea of dating someone, we can lose all sense of perspective. To get it back, start living a life that includes more than just one person. Expand your world, broaden your horizon and your focus outside of the person that you're dating. And honestly, if we were to take this even just a layer deeper, what makes this 10 times more complicated is if there's any sexuality that's introduced into your dating relationship. All right, this includes pictures that are sent back and forth to each other, the types of messages you're sending in text, the things that you talk about or think about. When you start to unleash that level of intimacy in your relationship physically while you're only still dating, this makes it much harder for you to broaden your focus or to be able to really see clearly on what's taking up too much of your emotional capacity right now. There's a reason that God designed that kind of intimacy to only take place within the bondage and the commitment and covenant of marriage, right? It's the safety net that makes all of the emotions that come with that maybe you're not even realizing yet at your age. All right, right. It's what makes all of the emotions that come with that safe and liberating. But when we take it outside of that, it blurs our focus. It blurs our ability to think clearly about the person we're with or our decisions for the future. So that's just a little sidebar caveat when it comes to that. But if you're going to broaden your focus to include more people in your life, that's going to be so much more difficult if you have gone a layer deeper than you probably should have at your age. So if that is you, that's not a beat down on you. Right? We all struggle with different things. But I would encourage you to open up and talk to someone who can be a spiritual guide and a mentor in your life. Talk to a small group leader, talk to your parents, talk to people who can help give you the wisdom and help you walk through that struggle as it comes with its own unique burdens. So sidebar over, let's get back to number 2, which is if you're currently in a relationship, don't forget about the people around you. Okay, this kind of goes hand in hand with the first one, but don't ditch your friends, don't abandon your family, don't lose interest in the people that have been important in your life. It can be so easy to want to spend all of your time with the person that you're in a relationship with because they're awesome, but don't let other relationships drop off along the way. 3, if you aren't dating anyone, don't make it your main goal. If you aren't happy with your life or who you are while you aren't dating someone, then you won't be when you are. No one can make that change for you. You don't need another person for you to have a great high school experience. Go be you, the you that God has called you to. Do things that you like to do. Hang out with people you enjoy. Listen, dating isn't a solution. Why? Because being single isn't a problem, unless you've made it a problem. If you meet someone along the way, great, but don't spend your high school years waiting around for that person to show up. There's way too much that is awesome about your life to not enjoy because you wish you were in a relationship. Okay, dating can be a really good thing, but don't miss out on being in high school because you're taking dating too seriously. Don't miss out on the chance to figure out who you are because you're too consumed with a relationship. Remember, nothing in life should keep you from the rest of your life, and that includes your relationships. If you feel like, that's me, then maybe you can pull your leader or a trusted adult to the side and let them know that you'd like some help. They can help find creative ways to get back in perspective. And sometimes talking about it makes all the difference in the world. So we're going to go ahead and turn it to your small groups to finish out the discussion, and then we'll continue it next week.